Hey there, my name is Joel, and in this video, I am going to show you the practical differences sonically between inexpensive drums and expensive drums. Because, let's admit it, nobody's done a video like that before. Okay, so no, there have been a lot of videos. There are a lot of videos of people doing such comparisons. People taking all sorts of different viewpoints, like saying, the nice drums are definitely worth the expense, and then other people going, $300 drum set or a $3,000 drum set, which one's better, and maybe concluding that it's not worth the $2,700 difference or whatever. All sorts of different kind of agendas, I guess, behind making such comparison videos. But I didn't really want to try to tell you that one is necessarily better or more useful than another, because obviously the requirements and the needs and the interests and the wants that we all have as players, as producers, people recording drums, because these drums are recorded in order for you to be able to hear them on the video. So this is useful information for producers and people who engineer and record drums, as well as those of us who play them. But different drums have different sounds. And I think what you'll see here is that between the cheap drums and the nice drums, and that's just kind of what I'm calling them for lack of better terms, you put good heads on them and you tune them and you mic them well, and you're going to get good results out of either one of them. We really live in a very fortunate time when it comes to drum products, because your average sort of entry-level drum set now is more cost-effective and better built than a comparable product 30, certainly 40 years ago. Just manufacturing technology has come a long way, and economy of scale and all that kind of stuff. So we actually live in a time where you can really buy a very modest drum kit. And if you know what you're doing with tuning and miking and processing and things like that, you can get great results with it. So I'm not really arguing that one's crap and one's, killer. But I just really wanted to create a video that was hopefully informative in a way that maybe others don't seem to be to me, because as a recording engineer for 30 plus years now, I listen to some comparison videos and I'm really not sure what they're doing processing wise. Like, you have to mic a drum to be able to present it on a video for someone to listen to, right? And so the way that you engineer, if you're a terrible engineer, you're going to get a terrible result. So I wanted something that's going to sound good and be useful, but I also wanted something that's going to be generic in the approach to presenting it, that doesn't really favor one kit over another. Because that's one of the things that I think I question about some videos, is that I think people in some of their comparisons, they're trying to sort of optimize each drum or each kit or whatever. So they'll take the cheap kit and they'll tune it up really well, and they'll mic it up really well, and they'll process it and really try to bring out the strengths of that kit. And then they'll take the nicer kit and they'll do the same thing and really try to maximize the good of that kit. And in doing so, they've sort of treated each differently. And you don't know if what you're hearing is useful for informing you about the quality or the performance of each drum or drum set, or if it's more the quality of the engineer who's presented each, that they've just treated them differently. So I want this to be truly useful. So to that end, the only differences between the good kit and the bad kit, or the good kit and the cheap kit, I won't say bad because I actually kind of like them both, but the good kit and the inexpensive kit, the only difference really is in what I actually played, because I couldn't play them at the same time. Though I tried to sort of cover the gamut of dynamics and playing with the snares on and snares off and things like that, and just kind of broadly show you what the drums themselves do. But then it's really just the drums themselves, because the microphones are exactly the same, the heads are the same heads, the tunings, the positioning of everything, the signal path, the gain settings. And then when I mixed them, because I did mix them, these are not raw tracks, I did kind of sweeten them a little bit with some mixing, as I think one has to do, because quite honestly, drums that sound great but then are mic'd individually and there's no processing at all on the mics tend to be really kind of woofy and dark and boxy and kind of annoying, and they don't really sound great to me. You really kind of gotta sweeten them a little bit with a little bit of mild, anyway, processing. And so that's what I've tried to do, is do a mild, gentle, flattering kind of processing to kind of enhance the overall presentation, but not to favor one kit over another in any way. Something that's broadly useful and generically sweetening to the overall presentation of the drums. So really, it's the drums that make the difference. And I'm not going to try and argue that one is necessarily better than the other. They are different. And you'll hear the differences, particularly if you know what to listen for, and I am going to tell you what to listen for. But first, I'll give you kind of the nitty-gritty on each kit. I've got two kits. One belongs to a buddy of mine, a guy named Phil. He runs sound for the cover band that I play in. And these are his drums that he keeps on the trailer with the sound equipment. So when I go to a gig, I take a cymbal bag and a stick bag, and I don't have to schlep all my own stuff around. So that's really cool. But it is a Drum Workshop, or DW, collector's maple kit in a natural maple finish. And the drums that I'm using, he's got more toms, but I'm using a 22-inch kick, a 12-inch rack tom, and a 16-inch floor tom with a 4.5-inch deep by 14-inch snare drum. 4.5 because the other snare drum I'm using a 5-inch, and that was the closest that he had to that 5-inch, and I was using his drums because I was recording in his space. By the way, he runs a piano store. You'll see in the background that there are pianos behind me. And we're in the recital room at his piano place. He's got a recital room in the back that he, it's large, it's very ambient. That's why I wanted to record there, to get the sound of a really large, spacious environment. So I'm using his drums, but I brought the other kit. The other kit's mine. It's an uber cheap kit made by a company, or just maybe it's a stencil, modern stencil kit that's branded Borg. I've never heard of them. I know nothing about them except by looking at this kit. It is a bottom dollar entry-level kit. Very soft, lightweight shells, probably poplar, maybe even basswood, which is softer and lighter than poplar. Plastic covered. They have single lugs on each drum rather than two sets of lugs. For a double-headed, drum, it's just one double-ended lug with two key rods. So basically like snare drum lugs everywhere, which is, I realize, is popular. A lot of boutique companies actually do that on fairly expensive drums. I've never been a giant fan of that. It's kind of cool aesthetically to look at, but I don't like big, long key rods that are very, very easy, far too easy to bend and damage. Plus, if you don't get them absolutely lined up perfectly, then just a slightly off angle, when you position those key rods, winds up just looking weird because it's not straight. And so that's kind of annoying to me. But anyway, not only did they save money by just having single lugs instead of using two sets of lugs on each drum, but they only put 5 lugs on the 12-inch tom, which, if you know anything, even inexpensive drums, 12-inch toms have 6 lugs. And the 16-inch floor tom only has 6 lugs. And even inexpensive drums typically have 8 lugs. And the 22-inch bass drum only has 6 lugs, which, again, inexpensive drums typically will have 8 per head, and professional drums that are 22 inches will have 10. I mean, that's pretty much how it is. So it's definitely a bottom dollar kit, which I think makes it really great for this comparison, because many could argue that the DW kit is really kind of a top of the line kit. So you really have the broadness of the spectrum presented here. The drum heads on the kit are Aquarian heads. I've got texture coated on the snare drum and tom batters. The underside of the toms are classic clear. Underside of the snare is classic clear snare side. The kick batter is a Super Kick 1, which is the single ply version of the Super Kick. And the front is a black regulator head, which is a single ply head that has like a small felt ring on the inside of it, just to kind of kill the high frequencies from the front head. But otherwise, it's a single ply head that resonates quite well. Those are the heads that are used on both kits. I'm tuning them the same way, the same microphones on both kits. In fact, I will put in the description what microphones are being used and the signal path and everything. It's all the exact same, all the same gain settings, the same microphone positions, all of that kind of stuff. That's all below for those of you who really want to know more about that. So 2 drum kits that I'm comparing here, but I'm actually going to do 3 different presentations, and they are as follows. First of all, a full mix. And a full mix is going to have room mics and close mics. Like I said earlier, I chose this room because it's very ambient. And if there's something that I have found lacking or missing from most comparisons that I have seen, is that no one really seems to pay attention to the room mic. And the ambient information that you get from room mics goes a long way toward informing you about the quality of the drum that you're using, because the room, well, it reacts to the sound that the drums are producing. And so listening to the room mics can tell you a great deal about what kinds of drums you're using. I don't want to give away more than that necessarily, but I wanted to really emphasize the room mics. And for that reason, one mix is the complete mix of the drums close mic'd with the room mics. And then there is a mix with just the closed mics. We're not using the room mics at all. It's just the closed mics. So, and there's no reverb, there's no like artificial ambience on any of this actually. So you get just a sense of what the drums sound like through closed mics. And then the third one is just room mics only. So that really kind of, that's a different perspective. And I'll tell you kind of what to listen for each thing. Again, I don't want to put thoughts in your head. I don't want to bias you toward anything in particular, but if you've never really listened critically to these kinds of comparisons, it's not hard to miss some things that really would be informative if you were kind of paying attention to those. So I kind of want to make you aware of certain things just to listen for as you listen to these comparisons. And that is, first of all, in the full mix with all the microphones, just listen to the overall sort of frequency content from each kit. Listen for the kind of the extremes, the higher frequencies, the attack frequencies, how pronounced the attack is, the brightness of the overall presentation, the deepness, the richness of the lows and things like that. How noticeable are those sort of outer extremes of the audio bandwidth, basically, between both kits? Something else to listen to is an overall sense of authority, which is kind of related to sort of what I was saying before, but this is just more of kind of a perception thing. It's not necessarily that one is louder necessarily than another, although I would argue probably one is. But which one just seems to hit harder and just seems to own the space more? And which kit is just a little bit more mild, a little bit more polite, I guess you could say, and just doesn't hit with quite the same level of authority. And then something else to listen to, particularly with the room mic only mix, is which one seems to be in a larger space. There's one that to me sounds like the room is bigger and it sounds like the mix is louder. And I will reiterate, there are no changes to any of the mix settings. But one definitely just kind of feels louder, and one just, there's more room, so much so that it feels like the drums are maybe even further back in the room in the mix than they are in the other one. Whereas the other one, it's not as roomy, it's not quite as loud, but it also feels a little bit more intimate. You're actually getting a sense of the attack or the front end edge of each of the drums. You can kind of feel the impact of the kick drum and the floor tom and things like that. You can almost kind of just close your eyes and sense them in front of you a little bit, which can be a very, very cool thing. But one definitely has more of that than the other, which definitely feels more ambient primarily. And yet all of the settings are exactly the same. So what's going on there? Which one sounds which way? And what does that tell you about the kinds of drums that you're either playing or want to play in a given production? That last one with the room mics, that's actually somewhat informative, I think, for people who don't really record drums, because the room mics are kind of capturing the perspective of someone who's just in the room with the drums. If you're not actually putting drums through a PA system or anything, and people are just more or less listening to you play in the club or the restaurant or wherever you are, maybe drums that have a little bit more of an intimate edge to them and a little bit less response from the environment might be preferable. So that's something to consider. Again, I'm not going to tell you which one's better, which one's worse. Beauty is in the ear of the beholder. And if you know me at all, if you watch my videos, I can find a use for anything. In fact, I pulled this thing out just to show you. First act. This is a snare drum, actually. This thing's 8 inches diameter. And there are the snares inside there. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's like they just are pressing up against the top head, just some wires, and have a little tension adjustment, how hard they press against the head. I don't know, that probably blew up my microphone. Hopefully not, but that's a snare drum. Now that came on a drum kit that my sweet mom bought my sweet boys when they were sweet little toddlers instead of the full-grown human beings that they are now. But when they were toddlers, my mom bought this kit, I think from Walmart, and it had a tom with it, and both of them had these little, pieces of bent steel that mounted on a 14-inch bass drum, and there was a little brass cymbal or whatever. And she bought it. Oh, wouldn't it be so cute? You play drums, and you've got boys, and maybe one of them will play drums. One of them does actually quite well. But she was thinking, oh, I'll get them a neat little drums kit. And I'm thinking, one, no, I'm not going to let them bang on drums. I don't want to listen to that personally. Secondly, I'll just commandeer that and take it to the studio and put it to use myself, which is exactly what I did, caring father that I am. And to this day, I still have this because it is an absolute piece of rubbish, and it is a really interesting backbeat for doing all sorts of things with. And so you can take absolute junk and make something really useful out of it. So don't think that this is a crap drum kit that you'd never want to play versus the best drum kit in the world, because that's not what this video is. It is, however, meant to be informative, just to let you know what, in general terms, you can expect performance-wise from inexpensive drums versus nice drums. So with all that bloviating out of the way, take a listen to this. Hopefully you will find this useful to you. I appreciate you hanging in here this long with me and watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.